The next method that we are going to add to our blockchain constructor function is called create new transaction, and it will create a new transaction for us. So let's start by writing blockchain.prototype.create new transaction, which will equal a function. And this function will take in three parameters. It will take in an amount, which will be the amount of the transaction, or how much is being sent in this transaction. It will take in a sender, which is pretty much just a sender's address. And it will take in a recipient, which is pretty much also just a recipient's address. So the first thing that we want to do inside of our create new transaction method is we want to create a transaction object. So we will say const new transaction equals an object. And this object will have three properties on it. It will have an amount, a sender, and a recipient, the same three parameters that we passed into our function. So we will say that the amount on our transaction is equal to the amount that we passed into our function. The sender, or the sender address, is equal to the sender that we passed into our function. And the recipient is equal to the recipient that we passed into our function. And that's it. That is our transaction object. So all of the transactions that we record on our blockchain are going to look just like this. They're going to have an amount, a sender, and a recipient. So it's pretty straightforward. The next thing that we want to do is we want to push this new transaction into our new transactions array. So we are going to say this.new transactions.push, and we want to pass in our new transaction. Great. So our new transaction that we just created will now be pushed into our new transactions array. Now, let me explain a little bit more about what this new transactions array actually is. Basically, what is happening here with this new transactions array is that on our blockchain, there are going to be a lot of people who are making a lot of different transactions, right? They are sending money from one person to another person, and this is happening a lot of times. Every time that a new transaction is created, it's going to be pushed into our new transactions array. But all of the transactions in here, in this array, are not really set in stone. They're not really recorded into our blockchain yet. They get recorded into our blockchain when a new block is mined, which is when a new block is created. So all of these new transactions are pretty much just pending transactions, and they have not been validated yet. They get validated and they get pretty much set in stone and recorded in our blockchain when we create a new block. As you can see here, we set the transactions on a new block equal to the new transactions, or the pending transactions, in our blockchain. So you can think of this new transactions property on our blockchain as a pending transactions property. And actually, let's change that now so that it makes more sense for us. So I'm just going to select all of these areas where it says new transactions and just change it to say pending transactions. And that might be a little bit more intuitive for us. Cool. So overall, when a new transaction is created, it is pushed into our pending transactions. Then when a new block is mined, or when a new block is created, that's when all of our pending transactions become recorded on our blockchain, and they are set in stone and they can never be changed. So basically, the point of all that is that in the end here, we want to return what block we will be able to find our new transaction in, because our new transaction will be in the next created block when it is mined. So we're simply going to write return this dot get last block invoked, and this whole part right here returns for us a block object, and we want to get the index property off of that block. So now this whole part right here this whole part right here is simply the index of the last block in our chain, and we want to say +1 right here. Cool. So from top to bottom now, the create new transaction method simply creates a new transaction object, and then we push that new transaction into our pending transactions. And finally, we return the number of the block that this transaction will be added to. Great. In the next video, we will test this create new transaction method to make sure that it works properly. See you there.